We interrupt this broadcast of C-SPAN to bring you this special presentation from the Town of Litchfield's Cable Committee. C-SPAN will resume following this program.
Hi, my name is Jim Queenan. I'm here today on behalf of the Litchfield Cable Committee. This program is about the new town hall and police station. A lot of people believe time has come for this new facility. Space limitations in the current building are at an all-time high. First, we spoke with some of the people in the town who are directly involved.
We've got a building that's right next to being condemned because we have overweight on the second floor. That's the easiest. And the other one is you got a chief of police that's trying to administer an 8-man, not including himself and the lieutenant, in a space that you couldn't raise a 4-person family in. And that's pretty tough.
How would the taxpayer benefit directly from the new facility?
Well, the taxpayer is going to have a facility that, right now, if people go in and ask for records on their building, or they want to look at their taxes, right now they have to go look for them. We don't have a file system that's ready to be gone into. It's not available. They can get their work done much quicker. They're going to benefit because down in the town clerk tax collector's office, she's going to have room then to actually start selling the license plates, which she can't do now. She doesn't even have enough room to put an extra copy machine, which she drafted. We gave her the money for it. She couldn't buy it because she had no room to put it. She still has to run up and down the stairs.
What are some of the alternatives if the proposed complex does not go through?
Oh, one of the alternatives is that we're going to have to put additional money into an old building that, as I said earlier, you're going to have to exchange the air down in the police department. You're going to have to change probably the back entrance to the police department because we'd already been warned that it isn't safe. We're going to have to move more things out in the storage shed. We probably have to wind up heating the storage shed to keep them from deteriorating.
What would you like to see done with the old facilities built?
Well, ideally, I'd like to see us pick up a grant, have it remodeled, and use it for youth, senior citizens. There's a number of things. Meeting place for people like the ladies club. We do have a women's club here in the town. They don't really have a place to meet. They go to the school. They should have a.
What the space crunch does is it prohibits the officers from doing their jobs without having to overcome hurdles. We're cramped on space, which means that the officers have to meet their needs. So it's a very critical problem.
How would the new facility help?
Well, what it's going to do is just about going to triple our space. It will allow us to put in some of the much needed things that we don't have today, like the holding cells. We don't have any capabilities of holding people today. With the new facility, we will be able to hold them right here in our local station.
With the new facility, what differences would the taxpayers see in the way that you conduct police work?
Well, I think the biggest thing that the taxpayers will see is if, in fact, there's a time when there's a civil liability issue that comes to face the town. With meeting the standards that are set down by the local and federal governments, if we meet those, obviously it's a lot easier to win your issues. Whereas if you don't meet, have that extra hurdle to go over. This will help when it comes to the donations. That'll be the biggest thing that they'll see.
What do you think should be done with the old town facilities built?
Well, there have been several options that have been discussed. Have have their good points to them, and I think what they should do is look at all those options and explore them to the fullest, and then choose whichever option is going to best affect the town.
The police need more space. The town people need more space. There's no question about that. The only question is that the right solution for the problem?
What do you feel is the right?
I think we ought to be building a town complex that consists of a town hall only, that once the town hall, that the existing town hall could be used as a police station for the next 8 to 10 years. The only thing they wouldn't have in there would be the holding cells, which they don't need at the present time, but they do need in the future. Significant costs on the tax rate in the not too distant future. I've looked at what the tax rate impact is going to be in and what I would tell you is that the year 1996 is not too bad, but we don't pay for the complex in 1996. We pay for the complex in 1997. In 1997, the taxes are going to probably go up in the order of about $3 a thousand, and the following year we're looking at at least an elementary school, and operating costs for an elementary school, and that's going to drive the taxes up another $3 or $4. Okay, so by the 1998 timeframe, we're talking tax rate in the order of $31 a thousand, and that's why I say anything you spend today, it's got to be what you need today.
Year for the building complex.
What do you think should be done with the old building if the building is built?
It should be refurbished with federal grants that will be available to us. And I like to see it used by different groups in the town as their main meeting places. You know, cable committee, rec center once twice a week, historical garden committee could meet there. All kinds of groups could go and use that building. And their groups could help pay the greater cost, heating, electricity, and everything else.
Do you think the town needs a new facility at this point in time?
Yes, I do, and I'll tell you why. For the past 2 years, I've been publishing a newspaper in Litchfield, which I just discontinued. However, I've been down to the police station many, many times, and the situation down there is atrocious. I don't think our public employees should be working in that type of environment. When they were talking about the Sally Port, when they come in the back door, they have to go down 6 very, very prisoners. It's really an awful situation down there, and people need to go down there. I went when the building committee originally formed. I had been for with the chief the week before, and I went with 5 other people on the building committee the next week, and I literally had to sit on a desk cross-legged to make room for everybody else. So, in the filing system, I truly do think there's a need. For $418 over 10 years.
What do you think should happen to the old town?
I really don't know. I'd like to see the historic nature of it preserved, at least on the outside. I think whoever takes it over needs a lot of work.
There is a need, but now the public has its say at a hearing on February 12th. Let's join the hearing in progress.
Deserve a lot of credit. Now, you people are the ones that are going to make the decision on this town complex. I'm sorry that there aren't 500 or 600 more people out there. Great. You're going to make the decision. I hope you make the decision based on town need, because there is a need. It's undeniable. Based on whether you feel that we have come to you with the best plan that we can in the amount of time that we've worked on it. Again, this is a 2-year project. And last, I realize that our pocketbooks are all hurting right now. I ask that you look at the fact that it's not going to get any cheaper, but again, you're going to have to vote. I want you to pay attention, ask as many questions as you can. We'll try to answer them all. And if we don't have the answers, we'll get those answers for you. Now I'm going to turn the meeting over to one of the members of the committee, Ronald Blennis. He is going to begin the actual presentation. We have the engineering firm, Lawrence. We have the project manager, construction manager. Joe Giles. Bill Giles. Bill Giles. Bill, that's fine. Okay. They have the answers, I hope. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ronald Blennis.
Good evening. First of all, just want to give you an outline of what we're going to do tonight. Briefly, we're going to do the same thing we did for the Budget Committee about 2 weeks ago. We want to give you a brief synopsis of where we've been, what we're recommending, and we're going to show you the plans, talk about the plans, and the money that obviously many of you are interested in, as well as myself. Before I do that, I just want to thank members of the Town Complex Committee, and as Cecil said, many of us were on what's called the Space Needs Committee that was formed 2 years ago, and on that committee was Pat George was attendant for the Selectmen. Cecil represented the Selectmen as well many times. Cecile DeRocha was part of it. Diane Jerry. Tim Parker was the chairman. He's not able to be with us tonight. Roland Bergeron participated with the committee. Chief Roberts participated with the committee. And again, my name is Ron Blennis, and I have been on the Space Needs Committee and then Town Complex Committee. As Cecil mentioned, Lauren Berlinder has represented the architectural firm that we have been using. He will have a portion of the program tonight. And then Bill Giles, which Cecil introduced, we'll get into a little bit, but he represents Milestone, and they will explain how that fits in the process. I think what I'd like to start out with is have Lauren come up and give us a brief look at the complex as we'll recommend, Ron, tonight.
Why do we have cameras on us?
Why?
Yeah.
The cameras are part of the Litchfield Cable Committee, and it's simply to...
Well, I guess I feel intimidated sitting here. People with their cameras on. If I protest the cameras, do they have to be safe? I mean, I just feel, I'm under behind you. I don't like sitting here with cameras scooting back and forth on me. I don't feel I have any privacy.
You got me. I don't have my right and left-hand attorneys here, so I don't know what the rule is.
Take the cameras out and do I have that right? I mean, nothing was said in the newspaper if I canvass here.
Well,
It's a false impression to get us down here and put us in front of the canvas.
I don't think it's a false impression, and I don't think that
It's the first time this was done before.
It's the second time it's been done before.
well,
We have ED cameras on public hearings, so it's on the budget. There's nothing wrong with that. This is a bond hearing.
Well, I mean, if I sit here and protest against it, don't I have a right to say, hey?
Let me take a little bit.
yes, we can note that you protest. You can put that in the minutes.
Dave,
Dave Cook? Do we have?
I researched the issue, and legally, the first thing I thought, my queue in here is great, not saying I'm too pleased with them either, but legally anyone can use any electronic means to record a public meeting. But I might point out that every school board meeting is videotaped, and they found those videotapes extremely helpful with our Hudson tuition dispute. So even though I'm on most of those too, you might feel uncomfortable town-wide, they are sometimes valuable. But legally, it's a lot of things.
Dave, I'm going to so note your opposition, but I'm going to allow the cameras to go forward. And let me, while I have the floor right here, I want to keep the questions directed at the people who are answering. If you ask a question, let the person answer you, and please don't argue until the answer is completed. And then if you get an argument, then come back. But I'll tell you, if I see that you're just going off or I'm going off, I'm going to cut the argument off, and we're going to move on, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions. And I want all the questions answered. We don't want to be here until 2 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Cecil. As I said before, what I'd like to do is start out with a general overview of what the plans are that we're presenting and that we recommended to the Budget Committee. Actually, for the Budget Committee members, we've actually made some changes to that based on some of the feedback. So we want to talk to that, but I'll let Lauren go through and start out with a general overview.
You have copies that you have copies in front of you of the overlay. Of that there, is there copies that we can follow through with?
Well, these are going out. I'd just like to speak for a minute about the need for the projects. Without a fundamental understanding of all of us of the need, really any plan that we come up with doesn't make any sense at all without understanding what the need is all about. What's the driving force for this project? Has everyone had the opportunity to tour of the existing town hall and police station to see what's driving the need behind this project? Is there any questions on that before we even move any further forward as to the need? I guess hearing no responses, there's an understanding of the basic need here that the police station and the town hall are really working in, I guess you'd term them adverse conditions. Over the years, their requirements, their duties have grown, but their facilities have remained stagnant. In fact, there are some issues now, of course, that we're trying to address, things like accessibility in modern times, things like modern building codes and ventilation, and all those are issues in the existing building, none of which can't be resolved, but when you try to look at all of them together, it comes up with really quite a project just to upgrade that existing building. So the committee was charged with a long-range goal of what's the wisest investment for the town in the long run, not just for the next year or two or even the next 3, 4, or 5 years, but in essence a 20-year plan. That's quite a challenge. Where Litchfield will be in 20 years. Some people will say maybe we'll stay at our roughly 6,000 plus population. Some people say we'll grow to as many as 10 or 12,000. The right answer is probably somewhere in between. We all know what's happening, of course, down the road in Nashua, the incredible growth there, the new jobs that will be coming into this area. Without a doubt, Litchfield will grow as a result of that. Really, our main concern now is just getting the town facilities up to current standards and then looking as far forward into the future as we can as part of this. So essentially, we're looking during the daytime to improve the efficiency of the staff that's working here, improve the efficiency of you, the users, how you interact with the town hall and the police facility. And one other thing is that's almost as important as this facility at night, meetings such as this, community usage, board usage. I forget how many different town boards and agencies that we counted. I think we're up to, we were into the low teens when we were looking. They have a home to meet. We've been meeting ourselves on the top floor of the fire station. That works, of course, except for the issue of accessibility, if that was ever challenged. So far, we've been okay with that. You know what we came up with is the right size. We're going to take a look at the plan. Maybe Steve, if you would mind turning on the projector. We're going to get you closer in, and we're going to talk a little bit about each part of the facility, but this is just an overview. How do we know this is the right size for a facility like this? Well, there's really three answers to that question. First and foremost, that we usually start with what we call a rule of thumb. How much square footage does a town like this typically require for these kinds of facilities? The rule of thumb would tell it's around 6,000 to 7,000 people, likely to grow to 10,000, should have a town hall that's close to 5,000 square feet and a police station that's close to 5,000 square feet. Now, very simple math will tell you that's a facility of about 10,000. We're proposing here tonight a facility of about 7,500 square feet. So you might ask, well, how come the difference? If the rule of thumb is 10,000, what are we doing with a 7,500 square foot facility? The answer to that really comes from two other means of arriving at a solution. One, there was a space needs committee that worked diligently for a year or more, examining every function that happens in this facility, on the town hall side, on the police side. And they actually arrived at a total number within 100 square feet of where we are now. Their total number that they came up with was about 7,400 square feet of need, looking into the future as far as they could. We also did our own analysis of a function-by-function layout. When we started to put together the facility, of course, we look at what is a simple form that we can calculate constructability, make this as easy to focus all the money on biggest bang for the buck, if you will. Coincidentally, by that analysis and by the layout, we came to the exact same conclusion. That was a little different from the space needs. The space needs had proposed a little more on the police side and a little less on the town hall side. But all total, we came to the same conclusion. And the one real key to success that makes this facility work is the common meeting room, the common lobby, the common toilets, and the common entrance. Facilities that each one would need independently as a police station or a town hall, but in fact, by they're sharing those, you can save over 1,000 square feet of space. So that's really the driving force of the two facilities still being in the same building, the police station and the town hall. With that, why don't we take a closer look at the town hall side of the map. Now, there we go, we're still on. What you see here is what's called a common core. Is for the most part where the public will transact their business. When you come into the facility, you will either go to the administrative assistant building area or to the town clerk tax collector's area. Each will have a transaction window. Or you will conduct your business with the police station if you have an accident report or such to fill out. You might know one of the things that's happening here is we're adding a degree of safety to the town hall police station. You've all read over the years what's happened in Newbury and other towns where the old-fashioned over-the-counter business transactions just aren't really safe anymore, even in New Hampshire. It's sad to say. So we've taken into account still that face-to-face transaction ability, but allowing a measure of safety between the public and the person who's serving the public. That happens at all of these. It's a fairly large library area, and that's because not only will this be serving to transact business, but also be where lines might form on occasional peak times if there is a line. It is set up so you can actually have two windows at peak times at each of these locations. It's also a place where a lot of you are going to socialize. That's one of the things that we've sort of forgotten that town halls and municipal buildings are all about. It's a community core. It's the heart of the community, a place for you to talk with neighbors. And that's exactly what this is about, is a place to allow that milling around to happen. There are public toilet facilities, and there is a large meeting room that will seat at least 50 people, and that can be used for all sorts of functions, such as where we are here tonight. It's So that's sort of the public access area and where you conduct your business. When you come into the town hall, one side of the building will be dedicated mostly to the code and administrative assistant functions. There'll be actually a room now with the zoning and planning board and files, and a real plan review work area that there can be a table and all the flat files and stick files that are necessary to conduct business, all the plans that have to be kept available. The general public can also access what's called the document review room. If you want to observe any town documents, any records, that's where this will happen. Again, somewhat in a secure area and overseen by the staff, but yet not getting into the heart of the facility. On the other side, we have the town clerk tax collect area. She'll finally have an office where she can conduct private discussions. That opportunity doesn't really exist now. There'll be a vault facility that will function both for the town clerk tax collector and general records. A lot of the records can now come out of people's barns and basements and attics and finally into a secure storage facility. There'll be a selectmen's meeting area, an office, break room, utility rooms, and here's a plus, an actual place to put stuff, a bulk storage area. That's something that often is not designed well into facilities. It's always something that gets cut. It's a place to put stuff. And no matter how much you allow, of course there never is enough, but finally there's a place for bulk storage. Things that don't necessarily have to be kept in a vault, but still need to be stored in a town facility. So that's a general overview of the town side. Now we go over to the police side. This plan is brand new, by the way. Until a week ago, we were about 500 square feet more on the police side than we are now. At the suggestion of the budget committee, we were actually able to reduce some of the square footage and incorporate some of the functions that we had by multiple use of some spaces, and in fact, creating a better access to the meeting room so it can be used in a command control situation, direct access from the police station. So we're able to eliminate some of the redundancies that we had in the plan. Police side, from the public point of view, you hope you only have to deal with this end of business. However, this is the real business end of the facility, where there'll be a sally port now for the police cruiser to come in, unload a detainee in a secure environment into what we call the cage area, where they can be processed for booking. And holding facilities, this is something that Litchfield doesn't currently have, but I'm sure the chief can speak to later, is the need for holding facilities. We've been prevailing upon neighboring communities for that function, and that's getting less and less available for your use. So this is the real business end, if you will, the real heavy construction. This will be all masonry. Other police functions will be, of course, more chief's office, detective's area, a room that can be used for interviewing, some juvenile detention while they're waiting for their guardians or parents to come, an armory, of course, locker facilities. The dispatch area will be a modern dispatch facility. We'll have a full console with all of the accoutrements. Records area that will be immediately accessible, so when you come in and need an accident report, the dispatcher just has to go a few steps to retrieve a record. And the same with the officers. As they develop the paperwork, the records area is right immediately adjacent to them. Secure evidence storage now, that the only access, in fact, will be through the dispatch area. And there's actually a secondary kind of an outdoor covered area for things like bicycles and such that there just is really no place for now. And finally, a room. So it's really a very functional facility. The actual square footage of the police side itself is only about 3,000. That's a very modest size for a town of this size, especially if you're going to grow it to 8, 9, 10,000 people. Any questions on the plan before we move on? We want to talk more about what the building looks like and such. Okay. Steve? There is somewhat of an upper level. What we're doing is putting mechanical space up here, so we're not taking up the valuable main floor space with things like air handling units. This will have a modern heating and ventilating system. We are, of course, going to be complying with current codes that provides fresh air for all the occupants. Modern heating, ventilating, and air conditioning system. And one of the things we found that's very important in building design is provide access to that equipment so that it's properly maintained, so that you don't stuff it up in the ceiling someplace that you can't get at it to change filters and belts and things like that. Now, what the building will look like. Very delicate balance when you're trying to design the facade of the building. In fact, one of the things that we try to keep in mind is that there is no real front or rear to the building. Every elevation of the building will be attractive. There won't be any butt end, if you will. The front elevation won't look a whole lot different from the back, and that has something to do with the master plan that we'll see in a minute. Basically, all pitched roofs, very fundamental design. It's kind of an old Yankee thing, but you design with pitched roofs in northern New England. Flat roofs, even with the technology that we have today, still have their problems. So whenever we can, we try to design with pitched roofs. It's what we call in New England vernacular style. It's something that looks like it belongs here in Litchfield. It's not foreign. It's not strip mall. It's a building that you're comfortable having even in somewhat of a residential area. If everyone knows where this will go on Hillcrest, it's actually somewhat residential and rural. The town forest is out there. And there is, of course, the residential area for Albuquerque. Very simple materials to be relatively maintenance-free. There is no such thing as never having to maintain. It will be vinyl siding, but done in a very appropriate way. That unless you really went up to it and touched it and felt it, you wouldn't know that. It's a modern material that we've been using more and more successfully as far as durability and maintenance. Long-lasting roof shingles. Everything that if you were building your home would be considered high medium quality. Not necessarily the best, but a quality that will give you long-lasting durability and low maintenance. Now, just an overview of what the site will look like. We'll get all the way out to the master plan in just a second. As you approach the site, finally there'll be ample parking for a town facility, all within ready walking distance of the main entrance or even the meeting room entrance. There'll be parking designated parking for about 50 cars, plus there'll be wide gravel shoulders on both sides of the road. So even for a very peak overflow event, there will be ample parallel parking. This, of course, is the main entrance, and this is the entrance to the Sally Port. And finally, the most exciting part is that this is all part of a master plan for development of that 22-acre plus or minus parcel of Hillcrest. And this is the proposed Albuquerque Ave extension. Part of a master plan. This is the part that will be developed initially. Ultimately, there would be possibly a fire station, and possibly a generation from now, this might be when the library could possibly relocate. Now, this is far-reaching long-term, but it is a giant step forward. It's planning for the future, planning for the next generation. So access would be off of Hillcrest, several hundred feet down from where the intersection is now with Albuquerque, and that's driven somewhat by sight distance. There is sort of a magic formula, if you will, that you need to see down the road on both sides, roughly 400 feet, to access the site. It will all become part of a new town green, a new identity for Litchfield, taking advantage of the natural terrain, even maybe a bandstand in the future where concerts can be held, where a lot of your festivals can be held now, holiday festivals, strawberry festivals, maybe even fireworks and such, that will become really the new core of Litchfield. Now, how do we know the facility? The bond that's before you is about $725K. There is a great handout. I'll just start into this and then I'll turn it over to Ron. But again, the rule of thumb, how much does a facility like this usually cost? One of the things that we consult for that is a nationwide guide called, anyone who's familiar with construction, is called means cost data. The latest means cost data says that a facility such as this, a town hall, averages about $80 a square foot. the low median. In other words, the quarter median, where about a quarter of the facilities are less and 3/4 or more, is about $65 a square foot. Well, guess what? That's where we are. We're at about $65 a square foot for the cost of this facility. That's on the low medium side as far as cost, but you still have high quality material. That's a very hard thing to achieve. The formula for that really is size times quality times ingenuity, and that's really where this committee has worked hard, and the ingenuity that went together to make this building very simple and efficient so that we could maximize the investment. The last part of that equation is where Bill Giles comes in. We didn't just put this budget together and hope it works. Bill Giles has been brought on board as the construction manager for the project, who's done a very detailed cost analysis to confirm that where we are with the budget is the right amount of money for this building. With that, I'm going to ask Bill to say a few words, and I'll be quiet for a while.
Evening. My name is Bill Giles. I'm Vice President of Milestone Engineering and Construction, Inc. We're in Concord, New Hampshire. My partner is Frank LeMay. We're kind of like we're from Missouri people. Your town committee people have gotten together. They've decided that they want a facility of a certain size, and we ought to be able to do it for X amount of dollars. Lauren comes on board. He kind of refines that down. Gets a floor plan that actually works and some concepts on the building. And this is not their first police station, so it's a lot easier to do. And then we were selected through a process. We put in a proposal along with, I believe, 5 other contractors. We were selected through that proposal. We then took this conceptual estimate that Lauren and his people had put together and the floor plans and the concepts. And then, like I said, we're from Missouri, so we said if we're going to have to guarantee we can build this for a number, we better make darn sure that what they're assuming is what we can do. And that's what we do. We've done conceptual estimates. We did one. We came pretty close to what they were trying to achieve budget-wise. And then we made suggestions on how the site should be, different placement of the buildings, what the structure should be made out of. What's cheaper this year is not necessarily cheaper next year. Cost of materials change based on things that we don't control. So we made those suggestions. They were accepted, some of them, not all of them. And we came up with a price which we're comfortable with, and we're prepared to sign a guaranteed maximum contract with, provide you with a bond that both Frank's family and mine hope that we're adequate, because before the bonding company pays anything, they take it from us. And I have 2 kids in college, and so I'd like to be right as often as possible. And we are guaranteeing this price based on the information we have. We're prepared to start after your town meeting and be completed in September. We provide a schedule for that. In this process, we'll finalize from the designs the changes. We'll put out packages for bids from all major subcontractors and suppliers. We'll qualify them ahead of time to make sure that they're assured properly, that they know what they're doing, and that they're providing the quality and the product that we want as your representatives, to make sure that you get what you're paying for. We don't want to get $1.50. We want to get $1 for $1. We don't want to get 85 cents either. We want to get what you pay for. That's our job. And we do that through this process. And any members of this community or other communities that are qualified to put in a proposal will do that. We'll sign a contract, and then we supervise this construction. And that's what we do for a living, and we like doing it. And we'd like the opportunity to do it for your town. Any questions? I'll be glad to answer. Yes, Chief.
I would just like to add to what Bill said here. He stated that they're prepared to sign an agreement for $600,000. Don't be mistaken that if the project costs $600,000, that $35,000 is going to go in their pocket, because that's not the case. They're working for our benefit. And if we sign for $635 and it comes in at $600,000, the $35,000 is coming back to the townspeople.
We have a cost guaranteed maximum price with a fixed fee. So what we save comes back. It's an open book process. You have access to audit the books. I didn't mean that's a normal way we do things. I neglected to say that, but that's where we're at. If we should save some money, it goes back to you. Yes, sir.
Question, if that were to occur, and money were to come back, can we pay the bond off really? Are we still incurring all the interest costs on the bond for the 10 years?
I would think that we could pay it off early, but I would have to get the exact figure on it, whether or not we could. But it would be our intent, if the money comes back at the end of this construction is completed, then immediately we'd head to pay off early.
Yeah, if you can do that, then you save the interest. Otherwise, you're going to pay the interest on that 35 even though we get it back.
Pardon me. I'd like to interject at this time. The bond issue is a 10-year bond issue of 15, which we're still kind of hammering around the numbers. The bond rate is lowered again. The last rate we had quoted on was 4.7354. In other words, well under 5% on a 10-year bond. On a $150,000 assessed valued house, the impact on a 1997 tax bill would be $48.50. It would decrease down to the last year $34.50 impact on a $150,000 assessed house, for a grand total of $414 for a house assessed at $150,000.
Yes. What if the bid comes in at 7 instead of 635?
Okay, let me just go back and capture some of the points here. I think some of them are very significant. One of the things that we as a building committee wanted to do was, first of all, I think Lauren mentioned the building that we developed was what we consider a very cost-efficient building by itself. The committee spent many hours going through a whole checklist of what do you want in the building, how do you want it built, options from here's the Cadillac, here's in between, here's maintenance savings, here's some architectural, or we can add in. The committee went through, and I can say that I think our primary function was to get a building that was going to last the town for a long time, but is certainly not opulent by any stretch of the imagination. But it is very maintenance-free, and it's going to look nice. So I think the committee did a lot of things to be sure that the figure that we're bringing forward is a realistic figure to meet our charge of a good 20-year building with not any features that don't have to be there or we don't feel are really a beneficial aspect of it. Now, one of the other things that in our process we were concerned about was how do we capture a cost and bring it to town and not run into some of the problems that some of the other communities had. I'm thinking of Hudson has been, you've, I think, read over the last couple of years, had buildings go out for bid after they got it approved by the town and had very, very large bids come in over what they had planned for, and they had a very difficult time going back to the people for more money, and that's a very unfriendly and probably discouraging type of process. So one of the things that Lauren recommended to us as a committee, we investigated and ultimately selected Milestone to do was have what's called a construction management company. Different than the traditional contractor where you put it out for bid and they bid on it. What Milestone is doing for us is taking the plans that our architect has developed and working with us to finalize those plans. And what he is doing, and upon approval of the town, once we have the authority to commit the money, he will sign a contract with us for what we're asking for. And if you heard him previously, he said that he will not exceed that figure. So this is not a traditional bid process that once we go out and get authority to build, that we have a bid process. One of the other aspects of this that's very appealing to us, though, is that we hire them as what traditionally considered general contractor, if you will. But what his role is to contract with the subs, get low-price subs, because he has to stay within the budget, and if through that process he is able to save any money over the quote he's given us on certain items, all those savings come back to the town. So we're very encouraged that this process will result in, first of all, a very fixed price to the town. When we go to town meeting, this is what you're going to be looking for. We're not going to be coming back for other money. And if there's any savings along the way, we're going to incur those savings as well. Going back to what Bill said, and those will go back into the town and however we want to use them. So,
we've heard the story before, okay? And I've always come back and says, oh, you misquoted, this went wrong, that went wrong. How do we know what happens if this comes in at 7 instead of 6:35?
what you want to remember, and I'll let Bill answer this question, he will sign a contract that has a figure in it, has this figure in it here. And if it goes over that, it's $800,000. That poor fellow is out quite a bit of money. That's all we're going to pay him. I think that's a pretty powerful situation. Is that right, Bill?
What we're doing is we're not, this isn't an idle commitment. We will sign a guaranteed maximum price contract after this is approved, or when that's approved. Hopefully it's approved. And at that time, we will complete any drawings that are left, and we will sign a contract for that amount of money. We have used subcontractors and suppliers to already give us conceptual designs and prices. We have at least one price from every supplier or subcontractor on each individual trade already from people that we work with locally. They will have an opportunity to submit a proposal in a bid situation on their category of work. This is an open process. We will prepare a package for instance, drywall. We will take pre-qualifications from drywall subcontractors. We may have 5 or 6. And they will submit proposals, sealed proposals. We'll open them. We'll evaluate the low price. And we'll award the contract to the successful bidder. So we're trying to get a balance in what we do so that we have covered all the issues. Traditionally, this process does come in slightly less than what we carry. It's not a significant number, but it is usually 1 or 2% less. And that's because the drywall might be $1,000 over and the painting might be $1,000 under. It's a balanced situation. It's all done openly. If you'd like to be at any one of these meetings or attend them, we're welcome you to be there. Yep.
Is the town going to hire, say we're hiring a firm, is the town going to hire a building inspector to check up on this firm to make sure that they're doing what's on the blueprints?
We already have a building inspector.
Let me ask Lauren, there's 2 aspects to that. We have a building inspector, and then also Lauren, as the designer and architect, has a function that maybe he can speak to very briefly that complements the building inspector and provides oversight of town management.
Yeah. These are all great questions, because you want to know what happens if. That's a valid concern. We try to make sure, as the architect on the project, that's one of our roles as the advocate for the owner, is to make sure you have a belt, suspenders, cummerbunds, and everything else you can possibly have to hold this project together. We are one of the checks and balances. Our role during construction is to be on site regularly, either myself or my various engineers, if it's structural or mechanical. Part of the miscellaneous expenses that you see in the budget here will be for a testing agency for things like soils and concrete to assure that what's being put on the site meets the specifications. It undergoes lab analysis as well as observation. There is your advocate for the town as the building inspector. He'll be intimately involved with the project. Bill and his people has the construction managers as part of their role to oversee. They, of course, have a full-time construction superintendent on the job. So there are really several tiers of quality control here that something would have to go through. And finally, on the payment end of it, there is what we call the release of liens process. With every monthly requisition, the money that goes out from the previous month has to be confirmed that what was paid to these people, and they've actually released the lien that, yes, I received this money. It's a process so that they can't put a lien on your building. And that happens every month. It's part of the process. And even if all else fails, labor and material payment bond and a performance bond that's included within the cost of the construction management services. That's sort of like the absolute end. In all my experience, we've never had to invoke a bond, but it is there as the absolute last.
I guess part of my question is really maybe have anything to do with you fellas. We have a building inspector that has many jobs in this town. I don't know that if he has the capability or the time to inspect a project this large. And that's why I'm concerned that we hire, that this is going to be a professional inspector that has time and I don't think Roland's ever worked on a project this big.
Oh, yes, it's much bigger.
If I may, there is another tier there too. The state inspection process. Roland has the power to invoke the state inspection services for plumbing, for electrical, any of the specialty items that he doesn't feel comfortable with. He can fall back and ask the state to come in and inspect. So that's his fallback if he feels that it's overwhelming to him.
Yes, this goes back to Bill. Yes.
Can we talk about the building itself inside?
You're greatly, I'm glad you said that. I wanted to talk about
We
that.
don't,
Yeah.
I,
Which section would you like to go back to?
fire station. Oh, police station, I'm sorry.
Police station? Okay. Well, while he's doing that, Bill, can I take that question and we'll get back to that? Try to keep-
The discussion so far has been, we got a fixed cost, and hopefully it'll come in less. Last Thursday, the selectmen asked us to put $35,000 in the operating budget as a contingency. We put $20,000 in as a contingency. So really, we're talking the bond plus 20 grand, and maybe you should address what that money is for.
Okay. Yeah, I want to get back to that budget in detail. So I kind of want to finish the building because I think that's really the meat of it. I want to make sure everybody understands what we're trying to sell here, and then we can talk about dollars. Okay. Sure.
I mean, I understand now, and I don't fully understand what you're saying with Bill, but by saying more money, you're not saying 635 as far as the building's concerned. That's not changing at this point. Okay. I can understand the whole addition to the police station. I mean, not the addition, but what's going on as far as the police station, but I'm concerned about this holding area on the end. The holding area and the place for the cruiser to be in, the cost of all of that.
Well, let me, rather than answer that question, I think that's probably, I'm going to have somebody do, and I'm going to ask the police chief to do that, is to say, why do we have to have that? I think it's a fair question for you to understand the need for this rather than the cost of it. We did allude to it. Lauren mentioned very quickly that this is not something we have now. What I'd like to do is have the chief explain why it's there, why it's not there today, and go from there.
Okay. You bring up the issue of reference to the Sally Port and the holding facility. Is that correct? That's the area that you'd like me to address? Okay. The reason that we have the Sally Port is for security reasons. What this will allow us to do is we'll be able to, the cruisers will have the door openers up in the with a detainee. They will open up the door, they will go in, drive the cruiser inside, and they will close the door behind it. Basically what we're doing now is we're in a secured facility. Okay? If we have a detainee who is rambunctious, is objecting to where it is he's going or whatever, he can sit right there in that car. He doesn't have to go anywhere. He doesn't have to be subject to any alleged police brutality. He doesn't have to be subjected to any other types of, on the concrete or whatever. When he wants to be a gentleman and he wants to be processed properly, then at that time we can open up the cruiser and bring him into the next stage. Other than that, those cruisers can sit there until he grows old, for all we care. But this also adds security to the police officer. Okay, we won't have to incur, workman's comp because the officer fractured a part of his body when he was wrestling with an individual, or we aren't going to sustain unnecessary property damage, cruiser damage, windshields, windows, that type of stuff. Because the individual is plain and simple, is not getting out until he's ready to get out. Once we make that determination and he's given up the fact that he's going to go there, then we walk him into the next door that you see off of the Sally Port is classified as a cage area. And that cage area there is, again, that's the first room that he goes into inside the building. It's a completely secured area where he can't do any damage in there. He just stays there until the officer has an opportunity to come out into what is listed as the booking area, at which time he'll be setting up to do the process. This will be filling out the paperwork, preparing, the fingerprint cards, doing somebody that's been arrested for driving while intoxicated, getting the intoxilizer machine prepared if in fact do get our own intoxilizer, and all the preparation will be done. He's in a secured area. He'll be brought out at that point. He will go through the booking process. The booking process has several steps into it. He goes in, we have state reports that need to be filled out, arrest reports. We have fingerprints that need to be filled out. He's got to be photographed. If he's in there for a breath test, he has to be given a breath test. Once this procedure and all the paperwork is filled out and he is properly booked, then he is able to go into what is labeled the holding cell. These holding cells, the difference between the holding cell is the cage. You'll see that there is toilets in the holding cell. There are some form of a seating arrangement for them, whether it be a wooden bed or a wooden bunk for them to lay down or sit down, whatever they choose to do. Individuals who are going to be detained for longer periods of time, okay? While primarily what they'll be doing is waiting for somebody to come in from wherever they're going to make their arrangements to come in and pick them up. We have to have a place to hold them. There will be a secured area. They will not be allowed to have any further access to the police department from that point. Currently, they have complete access to the police department. We have no means in which to secure our prisoners today. And this is what has caused us to seek assistance from neighboring towns, primarily being the Nashville Police Department. But this is for their own protection, for the officers' protections, and for your protection. This is where your liability issues come in. Police brutality suits come in from here. Injuries come in as a result of this. This is to help protect you against that.
Real quickly, Dave,
Yeah.
just explain why we don't have it today, but we need it in the future and why we're planning for it.
In 1995, our records show that we had 225 arrests for the year. Okay, so you can say it's not quite one a day, but it's certainly 2 or 3 times a week that we come in custody of people. Custody means that these people will be going through this process. Okay, so we will be using, the Sally Port will be using this process based on 1995 figures, 225 times in 1996 is what we're basing it on. And I will also note that for the last 3 years, we can show that our arrest records have continually increased.
Okay, well, how many officers were injured last year? You're telling me, I mean, I almost seems that you're telling me things that maybe I just can't. It seems that you're telling me things that are in a big city. I mean, you're telling me you have a problem with at the Sally Port because you have officers getting injured and so and so. I mean, is that recorded that a lot of officers have been injured in bringing people in?
Well,
I mean, all I'm trying to do is I hear what you're saying to me about why you need certain areas. I mean, I can look at the cage too and say, well, I mean, could you put a toilet in the cage, and would that then be a large enough room without having the holding station?
Well, by having the cage, one of the problems that you run into is when you have a male arrested at the same time, okay, or that you have a juvenile. The federal standards indicate or dictate to us, okay, that when you have a juvenile arrest, it takes a whole different process, okay? You cannot mix an adult, whether it be male or female, with a juvenile. They have to be separated. So what this does is this, by this cage, if we happen to have a juvenile okay, we can secure him in one of those other holding cells and we meet the federal standard. We will not be subjected to civil litigation for putting an adult and a juvenile together. This gives us that flexibility. The same way as if we have a male and a female arrest, okay? The last thing in the world you want to do is put a male and female together, okay? We just don't need the aggravation. So what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to separate them.
Yeah, but I understand. I mean, if you, on an average, have, for the sake of discussion, one a day that come in a couple a week, I mean, it sounds like you're giving me the impression that you're going to have people just flocking in there.
Well, I don't think that I would use the word flocking.
Well, okay, that you will have many people in there that's going to keep the holding areas in the cage kind of full all the time. But that doesn't seem to be...
No, it's not.
I mean, is there a... I'm going to ask you the question, and I want the answer, is what is it costing for that addition that we're putting onto the building? I mean, how much difference? And all you have to do, sir, is give me the price. Okay, you don't...
$61,000.
Okay, all right. Is that something I can understand? Well, let me ask you this. At the present time, you're using the Nashua facility?
On most occasions, yes.
Okay. Are they saying that you can't use their facilities?
No, that is not the case.
Are they saying we can't use the Hudson facilities?
With
I don't know
Hudson,
if you use
yes.
them. I don't know if you use that.
Right. With the Hudson facilities, we do get turned away much more than we do with Nashua, mainly because Hudson has a different manpower problem, and therefore we don't have the ability to go there as much as we do to the city of Nashua, who has a booking officer 24 hours a day.
I saw a hand up over there.
Does the town incur any additional liability or insurance costs because they don't have that facility currently?
No, we're covered for that. Now, we have to be covered.
And
I think
but
this cost-
having that won't reduce your cost of insurance and liability.
There are costs, I think, and we talked about this during our meetings, of this transport back and forth to Nashua, that this is intended to also reduce some of those transport
Right.
costs.
Right. When, out of the 225 arrests that we had in 1995, I cannot give you the exact percentage, okay? But the majority of those 225 arrests caused the town to have to take an officer and transport them. And a great many of times, that left nobody in town in which to answer other problems that have come up, okay? And when there are occasions where the officer leaves and there's one man left in town, there are certain situations where you can't send one man. And domestic situations being the number one problem, where you send two officers. And my policy says that when there's a domestic situation, there will be two officers go to all domestics.
I think to answer your question, one of the things the committee looked at and why we felt that this was something that we should plan for in the future and accommodate, because there's added cost that will be occurring as things continue to grow. That this will save, and also I tend to think, as Dave pointed out, this makes a much more efficient and safe operation, because there will be times when he will be bringing people in here, not transporting. But if you've ever been down in a police facility today, and can imagine somebody that doesn't want to be there in a very open area, there is no way to control them. There's always someone has to, we'll say, babysit it, for lack of a better word. This takes that responsibility away, puts them in. They're controlled, allows the officer to go do other things again, reduce our costs further that way. So we feel that even though there's a $61,000 cost, for a number of reasons, as we grow, this fits the 20-year plan, keeps our costs down for police operations, and makes a more efficient operation. Yes.
You may have somebody at the office sitting in.
There has to be somebody in the building.
Same situation, single shift, you still got to bring somebody in if you want coverage.
There has to be somebody there, but as we talked about before, and Dave, you can continue to talk about this because I'll probably screw it up, but one of the things that at that point is there somebody either on dispatch during the day, or Dave has to bring other officers in to cover some of that aspect of it. They're out of town, we have them there to do the booking, they're available to go out on call. So in the long term, that's a benefit for the town. The other side of it is we don't know, we're planning for 20 years, and one of the other aspects of it that is probably more important is this opportunity in other communities may not continue to be there. So to put this on after the fact would be far greater than the $61,000 we're looking at now. It would, I don't want to estimate, but you know how it is to add on to a house after you built it.
I guess my only point is that, if I recall, Dave, most of your activity is when you're single shift operation.
No, that's not.
Oh, that would, okay, that's what I read in the warrant article. When you ask for officers, that's when most of your arrests take place, in single shifts. That's what it said. Maybe I misread it.
On the warrant article?
Yeah. So it almost seems, so it isn't in a single shift operation when most of your arrests take place?
The rest take place in a single number. What I'm saying is that we had the occasion in which it takes place where there's only one officer on duty, and yes, we had the occasion when we have two officers on duty.
Okay. And when one's on duty, you send them out of town, you got to bring somebody in for coverage. If you have them in the office, you bring somebody for coverage. If you're going to put a prisoner in the holding cell, you got to keep the officer there. You're not going to leave him in the holding cell all by himself. And if you want coverage in town, you got to bring another officer to cover.
If I take an officer out of town?
If you have a prisoner in the holding cell here and you want to have coverage in town, don't you have to bring another officer on duty?
Not necessarily, no. No. What we need, and maybe I can explain this better, okay? When we arrest an individual, there's a certain process that we have to go to that gets us to the point where the subject's entitled to be released on bail, or he is not entitled to be on bail, in which time he has to be secured overnight. Okay? Now, the way we do it now is that when the arrest is made on the road, the officer goes directly from Litchfield to the National, and we go through the booking process there. A minimum of 1 hour cost us to go to Nashua and back. That's the minimum. If we're dealing with an individual who is been arrested for a liquor violation and is needed to take a breath test, or if we get into Nashua and Nashua has booking ahead of us or whatever the case may be, we are now elevated up to 1.5 hours to 2 hours that this is going to take us. And this is a complete process. Okay? This will take us through the process where we go into Nashua, again, we pull into the Sally Port, we dump the individual into the cage, okay? Then we go in and meet the booking officer. The arrestee is taken out of the cage and is brought in, and the Nashua booking officer does the booking process for us. And then after we've done that, then we secure him in the holding cell. What we will be able to do here is, instead of having to take the time to go from Litchfield to Nashua, that time will be taken to come to the local station to do our own process, to be able to get the individual set up. If he's going to be released, to call the individual, whether he's coming from Hudson to come and pick him up, or Manchester or Nashua, to get them over here, to pick the individual up. He's released. The officer is released from his responsibilities, and he's back out on patrol. Okay?
You're going to keep him overnight.
If he's going to be kept overnight, he's going to be kept here.
Okay, that's what I think he's saying, is now you have to have an officer in there in the station for that night and went up the road.
If the detainee is not eligible for overnight, at that point he'll either have to be taken to the Valley Street, which is the county jail up in Manchester, and put in there, or he would have to go to the Nashua facility in which to be held overnight there. Okay? But the thing being is that you won't know that in any detainee situation until the very end.
Lady behind the question.
Dave, if you arrested somebody, can I follow up on this question? If you arrested, unfortunately me right now, you had to bring me to Nashua, how much does this actually cost Litchfield? What does the average arrest that has to be transported to Nashua cost our town? Because I think simply you could take that cost multiply by the average number of rents per year, and figure out are we going to get our money back in 2 years, 20 years?
The actual cost, so that we are billed from Nashua, is very little. And
I don't mean that because I know
right.
how that works right now, but I mean as far as the salary, et cetera, of the person that's not here servicing Litchfield, served out in Nashua, really of no use to us here in Litchfield.
Well, that is correct. Once the officer leaves, he cannot possibly come back into service. Well, you're looking at, obviously, because we have a staggered pay scale, okay, somewhere, let's go in the middle of the scale, somewhere between $9 and $10 an hour, okay, for that officer to go out of town.
So on average, just to be extra generous, it costs you, probably every arrest that goes to Nashua costs Litchfield $50.
That's not a valid.
$30.
Well, you know,
It might not be to you, Bill, but it is to me. I'd like to have my.
Well, it's not valid because unless you fund it in the budget, which you don't, then you're not spending it.
Well, there is some funding in the budget.
Well, I mean, if the guy's gone.
It falls in his time.
Spending it,
I think,
Okay.
let me just, I think this issue, I think we've talked a lot about. You know, if there's any other question, please come up with Dave. I'd like to get on some of the aspects of it, some of the different aspects. Fellow in the back, Kevin.
Ken Rich. One of the things, I'm on the building committee. I'm arguing the same things back and forth between the Budget Act and the Citizen Meeting. One of the things that was put onto it is a 20-year plan. Litchfield's going to change, okay? Right now, we're talking 200 runs to Nashville, Hudson, whatever. Next year, another 50 runs. It's all going to increase. Nothing ever stays the same the way we wish it was when Mother and Dad said. Okay? You got to expect the whole thing. And that was one of the things on the building committee that we looked at. As the police facility, as with the town hall. So I just want to say, you know, we can nickel time, a little time here. 20 years, who's to say that any of us are going to be here? But at least we're leaving something for somebody else. It won't cost us much. That was our primary goal. The nickel dime part we weren't going to get into.
He hasn't asked a question previously.
Chief, I work closely with the National Police Department. Currently, their facility doesn't separate juveniles out of sight and sound as the federal legislation mandates. They're in danger of losing some federal funding for their community. Seems that currently you don't have any separate facilities other than offices. Are you also in danger of losing federal funding?
To answer your question, Chris, I'm sure that if that day ever came, that we were looking for federal funding, like through this COPS program and things like that, I'm sure that will be a factor that will be seriously considered. Very definitely.
That's the question.
Yes, Dave.
And the $48 a year, you're saying it's going to cost an average house for $150,000.
$48.50 the first year.
Pardon?
$48.50 the first year. $46.50 the second year.
What is it going to cost to this whole building, to heat it, to insure it, lights, maintenance, say for a year? And is that added into the 48 already?
No,
What's
that'll be
the
about-
cost? What's the cost of heating, insurance, and whatever for this building for a year to maintain?
We haven't got a calculated cost on that, but we're looking at the efficiency of this building versus the building we have. We have a building that's got electric heat in it right now, and obviously, and you know, that's costing us a lot of money. We got a building there that, Dave, I wish we had your windows in. We don't. They leak worse than a sieve. We're losing heat there. When we air condition, we're air conditioning with window units. Now, everybody knows a window unit, well, I don't know if everybody knows, a window unit generally takes at least twice the electricity per square foot that a large unit is going to take. So you've got that right there. you got a maintenance factor that we're looking at right now too. The building, the way it stands, if we don't do something different, we don't move out of it, we've got a maintenance factor that we've got to consider. One of those maintenance factors is you got a police department that is down there, and I wish I didn't have to record it, but I'll tell you, the air quality down there is substandard. So we're going to turn around if we don't do something, and we will do that. We will turn around and we will change the air system down there. That's going to cost us, I don't know how many thousand, but I would say $5,000 to $10,000. And we wouldn't stop there, then we would have to.
And this is my point, is if we're talking how much this building's going to cost us in our taxes, okay, what I'd like to know is how much more is it going to cost us to run it in my taxes? Okay, if you don't have the answer, I can understand that. That's fine. If town meeting, you'll have it. The other question I have is there any...
One question, I'll come back to
Okay.
Well, I can,
Bill.
the existing town hall costs us about $10,000 a year for electricity, which is heating and lighting and custodians. And you can look at this building and I'd be amazed if it costs that much to operate that what they're proposing. So my guess is it'll be a wash if not
Group over
less.
here shaking their head saying, yes, it is less than that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Okay, Dave.
All right, next question. Are there any costs in the future for this building? Let's say, does this building have, I'm just using examples now, does this building have cameras to watch the monitor the people in the cells and stuff like that? Or is it going to be, is this building going to need in a few years a lot of updates on it because we didn't do it now?
No, it's all built in.
Right. And if you remember, just a short few years ago, the town purchased a complete radio system. Okay, we on a 3-year lease. The current radio system, which includes the fire department, the highway department, is all modern technology, and will be set for a long period of time.
Is this the same with the town hall now? Is town hall going to be saying, yeah, we have the building, we have this, but now we need boom, 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 boom?
Well, Dave.
Well, you have furniture down here. Are you going to say, I can't think of things right offhand. Are you going to say, well, now we have heat and air conditioning, but now we need fans to blow it down and pull it up? Or is there anything in this building that you can think of that hasn't been put in? Pardon?
This is a totally designed building. It's not a piecemeal thing. What the engineers and architects have come up with isn't something that you're going to turn around and start adding on to. However, they have come up with a building. If you had to, you could. But don't forget, as you're sitting here tonight deciding whether you're going to go with it or not go with it, the same thing would be true is if I came up and said, geez, I don't think he's got enough room, I'd like to see 2 more cells. Fine, I could say that, I can want it, I might bring it forward, but you're going to vote on it. So this isn't something that once you get it, then it's a white elephant and it starts feeding off of you. Yes.
On somewhat of the same theme, you had said, based on the information we have, this is a guaranteed price. Are there any eventualities that would cause us to go beyond that guaranteed price?
Well, I think that question, I'm going to let the engineers talk about it, but that kind of leads into something that Bill Spencer mentioned earlier. Last Thursday night, I did go back to the Budget Committee and asked that $35,000 contingency fund that was taken out of the bond issue be put into this year's contingency fund. The Budget Committee saw fit to put in $20,000. Now, I don't have a problem with that. The reason we have a contingency fund is, obviously, something could go wrong. We could run into possibly ledge that we don't know is there. Now, they're going to look at that. But contingency, if you built your own home, you are not going to build your home knowing that it's going to take $150,000 to build that home. You're not going to go in with $150,000 because something may go wrong. If it goes wrong and you've only got 150, you're stuck. You may have a house, half a house. So we need a contingency to guarantee that nothing could go wrong. That's not a reasonable thing. We have guarantees from the contractor and the construction manager that all things being equal, they are going to come in. And if they can't come in, they're going to have a pretty good story as to why they can't come in. But I'm going to turn this over to Lauren and see if you want to add anything.
Normally, in any project, we recommend at least a 5% contingency. If you're doing renovation and additions, that's more like 10%. There are more unknowns unforeseen. But even in a new project, Cecil indicated there are soil conditions. As much as we've explored the site, we may encounter entrenching the water line and such. We may encounter something that was just totally unforeseen because we just haven't dug everything up on the site yet. You're also going to possibly encounter unforeseen conditions as the committee may decide that, gee, this part of it isn't really what we envisioned, and now is the opportunity before it gets any further. If we change a little bit of this and a little bit of that, it can be more like we want it to be. And that's really what a contingency fund is for. Now, ideally, you won't spend any of that, and that all goes back eventually into the town coffers. Whether that comes off the bond or how that's accounted for will have to be discussed. But to go into a building project this magnitude and be right to the penny is really not very prudent. Asking the fact that contingency, you may or may not be able to afford the generator for the facility. That's something that may have to come on later or be procured through National Guard, other government programs that tend to be available if you can hit or miss. It depends on whether your timing is right. Sometimes you have to wait years for that. Sometimes there's 5 of them sitting over near field. Whether how compatible they are with your facility and all that all has to be determined. But that's one thing that we have identified. If worse comes to worse, you won't put a full-blown generator in at the moment. You'll do it like you do now, essentially with a small portable generator that has the switching capability. So there are those kinds of contingencies built into the project.
Now, to talk again about the contingency, remember that your town contingency fund, as you voted in your town meeting, that contingency fund can only be spent if whoever wants to spend it comes back to the Board of Selectmen and the Selectmen approve it in somebody's budget that they can just pick and start spending. And I spoke with the Budget Committee. I spoke for the rest of the Board of Selectmen, and I gave my guarantee that $20,000 sits in that contingency, and it's for this building. And if it's not needed, it will go back to reduce your taxes next year. It will not be spent for something else. And you know, if his cruiser breaks down tough, you're not getting the 20.
How long will it take to build this building?
We're done in September.
April. April?
Yeah.
I'm having a slight problem with the dollars. Okay? Because when we approved the warrant article, the price of the building was $500,000. Okay? And that was a 7,900 square foot building. It's now a 7,500 square foot building. You knock 400 square feet out of it at $65 a square foot, which to me comes to $26,000, but you only reduced the price by $9,000. How come?
Because as you and I and the rest of the Budget Committee discussed, we had a fund of $50,000. Should I finish or? Okay. We had a fund of $50,000. A portion of that was spent. Okay? And when I came to you originally, I had a question of whether or not the line item that said we had money left over was correct or not. We wound up, the selectmen wound up deducting it twice. So that's why you don't have a total reduction, even though we took something out.
You want to address that specific question?
I understand mathematically what you said, but you've lost me. I mean, if the cost of building was $500,000 before you took 400 square feet out, then it's not $9,000 you took out.
Ideally, when you make a reduction like that in the plan, you take simply the cost per square foot deducted. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We've seen this time and time again where when you take something away from the whole, you don't necessarily take away, for instance, from the size of the mechanical system, the size of the electrical service, the size of the water service, all those common denominators that have to serve the building of a certain magnitude, unless you reduce drastically, like 50%. So unfortunately, you can't just deduct the square footage cost off. But what we did is went back into every line item. In fact, Frank spent all Friday evening after that, after the direction on Thursday to reduce the budget, after we came up with a new plan, allocating to every line item how much was actually reduced, linear footage of this, square footage of that. And that's the net result of what we came up with by reducing the plan.
Can I add to that, though? There was also somewhat of a cost increase. I'm Tim Parker. I'm chairman of the building committee. I'm letting Ron do all the talking for the committee. There was some increase in the cost because of the lay of the land on Hillcrest Road. The driveway had to be longer than was originally planned for, so there's some additional pavement in the cost. So there was some subtraction. There was some addition from the plans that were.
Not on what the budget.
What you voted on had a third driveway.
It was site development was $144,000. Site development now is, excuse me, 145, and now it's 144. So the change in the cost of site development.
It's a wash.
What is that?
It's a wash. The site work is a wash. There's some ups and ups and downs.
Bill, if you want to address that further in the budget committee, bring Lauren and the engineer back and we can go over it.
No, it almost looks like you took the 725 and backed into it to be blunt.
But you know we did.
I just found out how it was done. I didn't know until I saw the numbers just now.
It's a fair observation, and you really don't
So
have...
we lost 5,000 feet for $9,000.
Well, I mean, if they got 400 square feet out and they worked hard to do it, and only get $9,000, I'm crying.
I'm crying now as I'm hearing it, because that's the first time I heard it explained that way myself.
Can we put the square footage back in?
For $9,000, I would hope we would.
Scott, not to does the town have any future plans for the old town hall? What becomes of the town hall?
Well, that's a question that's been beat around for 2 years. First thing is, if this goes forward, there'll be a committee put together to do something with it. You cannot do anything with it until you know you're going to get out of it. You can plan, obviously, but your plans are not going to be very good until you know whether you're going to get out of it or not.
It has been talked around town what to do with it. It's got nothing to do with this building. I was just curious. Or what to do with the building.
Chief?
Dave, we addressed that in the building committee, and there were several options that were discussed and went around the table about. We didn't feel that it was necessarily our job to come up with that. But one of the things, like Mr. Belita from Turner Group has said, that there is federal grants available now for towns can go and apply for money to do some work, and if I'm not mistaken, it's up to $500,000 over 2 years. A 2-year project where the town can get $500,000 to a federal grant to do something with that town hall. Perhaps turning it into a historical society, perhaps turn it into some type of a youth center or something along those lines. That is one option that was, kicked around. So that has
as Mr. Williams has said, until we know whether we're going to be there or not. Right.
Will the footprint of this building fit on the existing land on Route 3A?
No. Plus the
Is
fact
it-
that
is there any space to
that
extend?
land that's on 3A is in a 100-year floodplain.
It's overbuilt now.
Pardon? Pardon? Yes.
Mike Lynch. On his 20-year plan, has there been any thought as on, mostly on the town side of the building, if we need to add on a post office or anything like that, can that be incorporated in here without having to add another building? Or any other type of facility like that?
A post office, we wouldn't have. We've got land. If the post office wants to buy it from us and put something, fine.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
That never will happen.
20 years is going to be the other thing to do.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about the 20 years. I love to talk about the 20 years. Let's face it. If you decide you're going to put a building up there, that building is going to be there for not 20 years, there 30, 40, 50 years until whatever. We've got a building right now that's nothing near what you're going to build, and that building is how old? 100. Now, the 20 years was...
That's right. Sorry about that.
All 120 years.
But remember, 20 years is a figure that we said you have to plan for the population for that amount of time. The town of Litchfield has got a lot of land around here that people look at and say, gee, you can build forever. But Joan's sitting back there, and she knows that most of that, a good portion of it, is wetlands. You're not going to build on it.
In commercial industrial.
So the growth factor in this town is an arguable thing, but I think it's going to be somewhere around 10,000, and that's about it. Bill? Go ahead.
You just mentioned something, commercial. If you put that building on Hillcrest in Albuquerque, does that area, that corner there, become commercial?
No.
So nobody can put up a little video place or
Bill?
Yeah, I should have asked this before, but I didn't. What are we doing there?
What is it for? Or
don't we have one now?
A Band-Aid.
I'm sorry.
We have a Band-Aid one now, which is service on each floor of the building.
Okay.
It's a temporary one that's rolled out on wheels, fired up by hand,
Okay.
plugged in, and then it services like 2 or 3 plugs on each floor, so you can run a couple of lights, the computer, and maybe the radio in Dave's office, Dave's dispatch room downstairs, and that is it. You hold a flashlight over the dispatch center.
Now, is this a permanently mounted one or is
Yes,
it portable?
that's permanently
I thought I
mounted.
saw, did you say portable?
Pardon?
You didn't say portable?
The line item for the emergency generator for the facility, ideally a facility like this would have about a $20,000 generator to essentially run the entire facility except air conditioning load. Partly because it's a public service facility, particularly in the time when it's most needed, when there's likely not to be power in town, and it can be a civil defense facility. Heat, lights, water, sewer, all that, accommodations. It's not an absolute necessity to have it from the get-go. You at least need to have the accommodations in the electric service to plug in a small generator to run at least the dispatch center.
That wasn't arguing the need.
Yeah.
But you're saying this is going to be built into the building.
That's part of the contingency right now that's in the project. If you can't afford it when it comes close to the end of the project, it won't go in.
But
That's it.
It's a full service.
It's a full service generator. Right. That's where that 24/7.
My father's going to be wife wanted a $25,000 generator. Same as the contingency wife wanted, and paid for 15 years on it. Take it right out of the line.
Yes.
I should have thought, as many times as we've talked about, for a real brigade out here, as many times as we talked about grants, speaking of the old building, it just occurs to me, I've never asked the one question, $200 or $300 or $500,000 in grants to turn it into a youth center or a community center, or whatever the amount is, are there turn it into a real police station? I'm talking about the old building.
No, there isn't.
No federal grants to turn municipal buildings into better municipal buildings.
And as you know,
But plenty of them to turn them into community centers.
right,
That's our tax dollars are worth it.
and you know that those may be going away if we don't move on it or whatever. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's only building
Any other
Iowa
questions?
tonight.
Okay, now, before you leave, how many of you have visited the town hall in all of the offices and the police station? I'd like to see how many of you have been there.
Every time Dave picks me up.
Okay, that's pretty good. I wish we had the other 500 with the same percentage. That's good. So, you know there's a need. Now, is this what we need? You guys are going to determine it. And if you have any other questions, get them out now. And if you've got questions along the way, before this goes to the budget hearing, and feel free to call on the selectman, the administrator, the committee. Ask them the questions. And if you've got friends and neighbors that have got questions, you'll get the answers, and we'll get the answers for you. I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope we've answered your questions. Bill, are you?
going to say the town hearing on the budget.
It seems the questions were varied. Even the Cable Committee's presence was challenged. Now it's time for you to decide at the town meeting on March 15th at the Griffin Memorial School. Thanks for watching. Till next time, I'm Jim Queenan for the Litchfield Cable Committee.
This program is brought to you by the Litchfield Cable Committee.